The wealth destruction system. Your neighbor drives a brand new luxury SUV, takes Instagram-worthy vacations twice a year, and just renovated their kitchen with marble countertops. Meanwhile, you're wondering why your savings account hasn't budged in 3 years despite making decent money. Plot twist. Your neighbor is probably broke, and those habits everyone thinks make them look successful are quietly destroying any chance they have at building real wealth. I'm talking about the middle-class wealth trap, and it's not what you think. This isn't about skipping lattes or cutting coupons. These are deeply ingrained behaviors that feel responsible, that feel smart, that everyone around you is doing, but they're systematically keeping you stuck in place, while people who earn less than you are building actual financial freedom. According to a Federal Reserve study, 63% of Americans couldn't cover a $400 emergency expense with cash. Not people living in poverty. Middle-class families with steady incomes, retirement accounts, and nice houses. Something is fundamentally broken in how we think about money, and today we're dissecting exactly what that is. Let's start with the most socially acceptable way to destroy wealth, the financed lifestyle. Walk through any middle-class neighborhood and you'll see $50,000 trucks in driveways attached to $400,000 houses. Here's what you won't see. The $847 monthly payment on that truck, stretched over 72 months, with interest rates that would make a loan shark blush. The average new car payment in America now exceeds $700 per month. That's not luxury vehicles, that's average. Do the math on what happens if you invest that $700 monthly instead of sending it to a car company. Over 10 years at a conservative 7% return, you're looking at over $120,000. But it gets darker than that. Cars depreciate the moment you drive them off the lot. You're not just spending $700 a month. You're spending $700 a month on something that loses value every single day you own it. It's the financial equivalent of setting money on fire, except fire would at least keep you warm. The middle-class justification machine kicks in here. But I need reliable transportation for work. Sure. Know what else is reliable? A 3-year-old certified pre-owned vehicle that costs half as much and won't trap you in payments until 2030. But I deserve something nice. There's that word again, deserve. We'll come back to that poison later. Here's where it compounds into something truly destructive. That car payment isn't just $700 leaving your account. It's $700 that can't go toward paying off your mortgage early. It's $700 that can't get invested in index funds. It's $700 that can't build an emergency fund that would prevent you from going into debt when life inevitably happens. The opportunity cost of lifestyle financing is absolutely staggering, and almost nobody calculates it. They see the monthly payment, decide they can afford it because it fits in their budget, and sign away their financial future without realizing what they just did. Now let's talk about the house. The middle class has been sold this idea that your home is your greatest investment. It's not. Your home is where you live. Sometimes it appreciates, sometimes it doesn't. But either way, it's costing you money every single month in ways that don't show up on your mortgage statement. Property taxes, insurance, maintenance, repairs, utilities, HOA fees if you're really unlucky. The general rule is that you should budget about 1% of your home's value annually just for maintenance. On a $400,000 house, that's $4,000 a year that vanishes into keeping your investment from falling apart. But here's the trap that really gets people, the middle-class obsession with upgrading. You buy a starter home, build some equity, then convince yourself you need more space. Bigger kitchen, better school district, home office now that everyone works remotely. So you sell, roll that equity into a larger mortgage, and reset the clock on another 30 years of payments. Every time you upgrade your house, you're not climbing a wealth ladder. You're restarting the same treadmill at a higher speed. The bank loves this. You love the granite countertops. Your retirement account weeps silently in the corner. What makes this particularly insidious is how socially reinforced it is. Your parents probably told you that buying a house was the smartest financial move you could make. Your friends congratulate you when you upgrade. Society treats home ownership as a mark of success and stability. Nobody mentions that the couple renting a modest apartment while investing the difference between rent and a mortgage payment might retire a decade earlier than you. That's not a conversation anyone wants to have at the dinner party in your beautiful, wealth-destroying home. Then there's the credit card trap, which operates differently than most people realize. It's not just about the interest rates, though those are bad enough. It's about what credit cards do to your perception of affordability. When you pay cash for something, you feel the pain of the transaction. Your brain registers that you're losing resources. But swipe a card, that pain is delayed, abstracted, psychologically minimized. The middle class has convinced itself that this is fine because they pay it off every month. Except most don't. The average American household carrying credit card debt has a balance over $7,000. At typical interest rates around 20%, that's $1,400 annually, just paying interest on past purchases, not reducing the balance, just paying for the privilege of having borrowed money to buy things they've probably already forgotten about. And even the people who do pay off their cards monthly are still falling into the trap because credit cards make you spend more. Study after study confirms this. When you disconnect the pain of payment from the pleasure of purchase, you buy more than you would with cash, even if you're financially disciplined enough to avoid interest charges. The wealth destruction happens slowly, imperceptibly. You're systematically bleeding wealth through 1,000 invisible cuts, and you've trained yourself not to notice the blood loss because everyone around you is bleeding at the same rate. The retirement account trap deserves special attention because this is where the middle class has been convinced they're being financially responsible when they're actually volunteering for wealth extraction on a massive scale. You diligently contribute to your 401k, feel good about the company match, and assume you're building your future. What you're actually doing is locking away money in an account designed to benefit everyone except you. Consider the fee structure that nobody explains clearly. Your 401k charges an expense ratio, maybe 0.5% to 1% annually. Sounds tiny, right? Over 30 years of investing, that seemingly insignificant percentage difference between 0.5% fees and 0.05% fees on a $500,000 portfolio cost you over $100,000. You worked for that money. You saved that money. And a significant chunk of it evaporates into management fees that you barely notice because they're taken before you see the returns. But the fee extraction is just the beginning. The real wealth destruction happens through limited investment options and forced holding periods. Your 401k offers maybe 20 investment choices selected by your employer's benefits department, who chose them based on relationships with financial institutions rather than your best interests. You can't invest in real estate through your 401k. You can't buy individual stocks that you've researched. You're trapped in a menu of mediocre mutual funds charging premium prices. Then there's the mobility penalty that nobody discusses until it's too late. Change jobs and suddenly you're dealing with rollover decisions, potential tax implications, and gaps in contribution timing. The system punishes career advancement and job changes, which are, ironically, the best ways to increase your income. You're being financially discouraged from making career moves that would actually improve your earning potential. Subscriptions represent another form of middle-class wealth extraction that's accelerated dramatically in recent years. It's death by 1,000 monthly charges. Streaming services, software subscriptions, meal kits, fitness apps, cloud storage, premium memberships. Each one is individually justifiable, collectively devastating. The average American now pays for 12 different subscriptions, totaling over $200 monthly. That's $2,400 annually for services that didn't exist 15 years ago, meaning you somehow survived perfectly fine without them. But now they feel essential because companies have successfully convinced you that ownership is outdated and access is the future. Translation: instead of buying something once, you'll pay for it forever. This subscription creep happens because each individual charge seems reasonable. $10 here, $15 there. Your brain doesn't aggregate these micropayments into the massive annual total. Companies understand this psychological blind spot and exploit it ruthlessly. They make signing up effortless and canceling deliberately complicated. They offer free trials that automatically convert to paid subscriptions. They increase prices gradually, betting you won't notice or won't bother canceling. The particularly insidious aspect is how subscriptions eliminate the natural spending friction that protects your wealth. When you had to actively decide to rent a movie or buy music, you thought about each transaction. Now everything auto-renews invisibly, and your wealth drains away while you sleep. Insurance represents another area where the middle class systematically overpays while believing they're being responsible. You're sold comprehensive coverage on depreciating assets, gap insurance you'll never use, extended warranties that statistically benefit the seller far more than the buyer. The insurance industry has convinced you that being fully covered is financial wisdom, when it's often just expensive peace of mind for unlikely scenarios. Your car insurance probably includes coverage you don't need. Your phone insurance costs more over 2 years than replacing the phone would cost. Your homeowner's insurance has a deductible so high that you'd never file a claim for anything except catastrophic damage, yet you're paying for comprehensive coverage. The correct approach is insuring against catastrophic risks you genuinely can't afford to absorb while self-insuring everything else. But that requires maintaining savings, and the middle class has been trained to spend every dollar and then buy insurance to protect against the consequences of having no savings. It's a perfect circular trap. Childcare costs have become another massive wealth extraction mechanism that particularly devastates young middle-class families trying to build wealth during their prime earning years. The average cost of full-time childcare now exceeds $10,000 annually per child in most states, reaching $15,000 to $20,000 in major cities. For families with 2 young children, that's potentially $40,000 in after-tax dollars just for the privilege of both parents working. This creates an impossible calculation where one parent's entire salary might barely cover childcare costs, yet they keep working because gaps in employment damage long-term earning potential. You're paying enormous sums to maintain career continuity that might not even generate positive cash flow for years. The middle class accepts this as normal because everyone else is trapped in the same system. Education spending extends this wealth extraction through every stage of child development: private preschools, tutoring services, enrichment activities, sports leagues, music lessons, test prep courses. Each individually seems like good parenting, investing in your child's future. Collectively, they represent tens of thousands of dollars that vanish annually while you convince yourself it's necessary because other parents are doing it too. The competition trap has you spending money you don't have to give your children advantages. They don't need to compete for opportunities that might not matter. The college admissions industry has perfected the art of extracting maximum wealth from anxious middle-class parents who've been convinced their child's entire future hinges on attending a prestigious university. You're paying for SAT prep courses, ACT tutoring, college counseling services, application essay coaches, campus tours that cost thousands of dollars in travel expenses. Then comes the actual college itself, where costs have increased at roughly triple the rate of inflation for decades. The average private university now costs over $50,000 annually. State schools that used to be affordable now run $25,000 to $35,000 per year, even for in-state students. You're told this is an investment in your child's future, but the math increasingly doesn't support that narrative. A student graduating with $100,000 in debt at 6% interest will pay over $1,100 monthly for 10 years. That's $132,000 total for a $100,000 education. That same student would need to earn significantly more than their non-college peers just to break even, and the earnings premium for college degrees has been shrinking while costs accelerate. Yet middle-class families keep signing up for this wealth extraction because they're terrified of their children falling behind in an economy that demands credentials for entry-level positions that didn't require degrees a generation ago. The housing trap represents perhaps the most sophisticated wealth extraction mechanism ever devised. You've been sold the idea that your home is your greatest investment, your path to wealth building, your retirement security. This is one of the most damaging financial myths perpetuated in modern America. Your primary residence isn't an investment. It's an expense that happens to hold some value. Real investments generate cash flow. Your house generates expenses, maintenance costs, property taxes, insurance, utilities, and the opportunity cost of capital locked into an illiquid asset. The financial industry loves promoting homeownership because it creates massive transaction fees, ongoing mortgage interest, and decades of wealth transfer from the middle class to banks and investors. You buy the largest asset you'll ever own using the maximum leverage you can obtain, then spend 30 years paying interest that dwarfs the original loan amount. A $300,000 mortgage at 6% interest costs over $347,000 in interest alone over 30 years. You'll pay $647,000 for a $300,000 house, and that's before considering property taxes, maintenance, and improvements. The middle class accepts this because everyone else is doing it, and because the alternative, renting, has been stigmatized as throwing money away. But renting provides flexibility, eliminates maintenance costs, and frees up capital for actual investments that generate returns. The wealthy understand this, which is why many genuinely rich people rent their primary residences while owning investment properties that generate income. They've separated the emotional need for shelter from the practical reality of wealth building. Your home also traps you geographically, making it harder to pursue better career opportunities or relocate to lower-cost areas. You become anchored to a specific location by an asset that costs money to maintain and money to sell. The transaction costs of selling a home, typically 8 to 10% between agent commissions and fees, represent a massive friction that prevents rational economic decision-making. You'll stay in a job you hate or a city with limited opportunities because moving would mean losing tens of thousands of dollars in transaction costs. The renovation trap further extracts wealth by convincing you that improving your home is investing in your asset. You spend $50,000 on a kitchen remodel that might add $30,000 to your home's value, but you tell yourself it's an investment. You're actually converting liquid capital into a liquid home equity while generating zero cash flow and possibly negative return on investment. The home improvement industry thrives on this confusion between expense and investment. Transportation costs represent another area where the middle class systematically destroys wealth while believing they're making reasonable choices. The average new car now costs over $48,000. Financed at typical rates, you'll pay over $800 monthly for 6 years, during which time the vehicle will depreciate by roughly 60%. You're paying premium prices for depreciating assets using borrowed money, which is essentially the perfect formula for wealth destruction. The car industry has normalized this insanity by extending loan terms to 7 or even 8 years, reducing monthly payments while increasing total interest paid and ensuring you're perpetually underwater on your vehicle. You trade in your car while still owing more than it's worth. Roll that negative equity into your next loan and restart the cycle. This trap is so common that being upside down on a car loan is now considered normal rather than the financial disaster it actually represents. Leasing represents an even more efficient wealth extraction mechanism, where you make payments on a depreciating asset you'll never own, then start over with a new lease when the term ends. You're perpetually making car payments without ever building any equity, but the car industry has convinced you this is sophisticated financial management rather than the endless treadmill it actually is. The monthly payment becomes your focus instead of the total cost of ownership or the opportunity cost of that capital. The status signaling aspect of vehicle choice amplifies this wealth destruction. You're not just buying transportation, you're buying an identity, a statement about your success and taste. The middle class buys luxury vehicles they can't afford to signal wealth. They don't have to impress people they don't know. A Toyota and a BMW both accomplish the primary function of transportation, but one costs twice as much and depreciates faster while generating zero additional economic value. The wealthy understand transportation as a utility to be minimized, not a status symbol to be maximized. They calculate total cost of ownership over vehicle lifespan and optimize for the lowest possible capital deployment that still accomplishes the transportation function. They're buying 5-year-old vehicles with cash, driving them for another 10 years, and redirecting the difference between an $800 monthly payment and zero monthly payment into investments that actually appreciate. That $800 monthly car payment invested at 8% returns becomes $150,000 over 10 years. The middle class drives that money around town while it evaporates through depreciation and interest payments. Education represents perhaps the most emotionally charged wealth trap, where parents sacrifice their own financial security to fund college experiences their children could obtain for a fraction of the cost. The average parent now contributes over $30,000 toward their child's college education, often by taking on debt or depleting retirement savings. Meanwhile, community college, followed by state school transfer programs, deliver virtually identical degrees for 70% less money. The prestige premium you're paying for a brand-name university rarely generates sufficient additional lifetime earnings to justify the cost difference. You're buying a luxury good while calling it an investment, prioritizing the emotional satisfaction of saying your kid attends a prestigious school over the mathematical reality of return on investment. The student loan crisis isn't just affecting young people. Parents are increasingly taking on debt through Parent Plus loans that follow them into retirement, destroying their financial security to fund educational experiences that often don't generate corresponding economic returns. You're sacrificing your own retirement to buy credentials that may or may not translate into career outcomes, creating a situation where both generations end up financially compromised. This intergenerational wealth destruction is normalized by cultural expectations that parents should sacrifice everything for their children's education, regardless of the economic rationality. Wedding spending represents another area where the middle class converts wealth into memories at catastrophically poor exchange rates. The average wedding now costs over $30,000, representing a down payment on a house or a year of retirement contributions. You're spending the equivalent of a new car on a single-day event that guests will forget within months, then wondering why building wealth feels impossible. The wedding industry has successfully convinced people that love requires financial extravagance, that commitment needs to be demonstrated through spending rather than through the relationship itself. This pattern extends to every major life event, where cultural expectations drive spending far beyond what generates actual value. Baby showers, birthday parties, holiday celebrations all become opportunities for competitive spending, where the middle class tries to signal prosperity through consumption. You're performing wealth through spending rather than building wealth through saving, creating an endless cycle where every life milestone becomes another wealth extraction event. Subscription services represent the death by 1,000 cuts version of wealth destruction, where small monthly charges accumulate into substantial annual expenses that generate minimal value. The average American now spends over $200 monthly on subscription services, many of which go unused or underutilized. You're paying for gym memberships you don't use, streaming services you rarely watch, and software subscriptions you've forgotten about. These recurring charges feel insignificant individually, but compound into massive annual expenses that evaporate without generating corresponding value. The subscription model is brilliant for companies because it converts conscious purchasing decisions into unconscious recurring charges. You carefully consider a one-time purchase but rarely audit your monthly subscriptions, allowing these charges to persist long after they've stopped providing value. That $200 monthly subscription burden represents $2,400 annually, which invested over 30 years at 8% returns becomes over $250,000. You're trading $250,000 of future wealth for entertainment and services you barely use. Insurance products represent another sophisticated wealth extraction mechanism, where middle-class consumers are sold coverage they don't need through fear-based marketing. Whole life insurance, extended warranties, and various protection plans convert actual risk management into profit centers for insurance companies. You're paying premiums that far exceed the expected value of claims because insurance companies have calculated these odds precisely and priced products to guarantee their profit. The rational approach is self-insuring small risks while only purchasing coverage for catastrophic events you genuinely couldn't afford to cover yourself. The entire financial services industry profits from middle-class confusion about wealth building, selling products that generate fees while delivering mediocre results. Actively managed mutual funds charge 1 to 2% annually, while typically underperforming index funds that charge 0.03%. That percentage difference might seem trivial, but over decades it represents hundreds of thousands of dollars transferred from your retirement account to fund manager compensation. You're paying premium prices for inferior results because the financial industry has convinced you that complexity requires expensive expertise, when the evidence overwhelmingly shows that simple, low-cost index investing outperforms expensive active management. Understanding these wealth traps is the first step toward escaping them. Every dollar you spend on consumption that doesn't generate lasting value or income is a dollar that can't compound into future wealth. The middle class remains trapped not because they don't earn enough money, but because they've accepted consumption patterns and financial products designed to extract wealth rather than build it. You can break free by recognizing that wealth comes from the gap between earning and spending, not from the absolute level of either. Choose transportation based on utility rather than status. Optimize housing costs instead of maximizing them. Question every subscription, insurance product, and financial service to determine whether it's building your wealth or extracting it. The path to actual prosperity requires rejecting the entire playbook that keeps the middle class perpetually broke while feeling temporarily rich. Your financial future depends on understanding the difference between looking wealthy and being wealthy, then consistently choosing the latter even when the former feels more satisfying. The vacation trap operates on the same principle, where middle-class families convince themselves they've earned elaborate getaways that require financing or drain savings accounts they spent months building. You're booking all-inclusive resorts, cruise packages, and destination vacations that cost $5,000 to $10,000 per trip because everyone else is posting their vacation photos on social media, and you don't want to feel left behind. That week in Cancun represents 3 months of potential retirement contributions, converted into memories that fade within weeks, and photos you'll look at maybe twice. The travel industry has weaponized FOMO to extract maximum wealth from people who already can't afford their current lifestyle. Payment plans for vacations, travel credit cards with points that encourage more spending, and all-inclusive packages that hide the true cost until you've already committed. You're financing experiences instead of building assets, then justifying it with phrases like making memories and you can't take it with you. True, you can't take wealth with you when you die, but you could use it while you're alive to buy freedom instead of Instagram content. Dining and entertainment spending represents another continuous wealth drain that middle-class families barely notice because it happens in small increments. The average American household spends over $3,500 annually eating at restaurants, not including coffee shops, bars, and delivery services. Add those in, and you're easily exceeding $6,000 per year on food consumed outside your home. That's $500 monthly that could be invested, instead converted into meals you'll forget about by next week. The rationalization here is that you're too busy to cook, you work hard, and deserve convenience, and besides, it's just $15 here and $25 there. But that's exactly how wealth destruction works. It's never the single large purchase that ruins you. It's the accumulated effect of countless small decisions that feel insignificant individually, but compound into massive annual expenses. That daily $6 coffee habit costs $2,000 annually. Invested over 30 years at 8% returns, that's over $200,000. You're trading a substantial retirement account for caffeinated beverages you could make at home for 50 cents. The clothing and appearance trap extracts wealth through the constant treadmill of fashion trends and social expectations. You're replacing perfectly functional wardrobes because styles changed, buying athletic wear you'll never exercise in, and maintaining appearance standards that serve no practical purpose beyond social signaling. The average American spends over $1,800 annually on clothing, much of which ends up barely worn in closets stuffed with options. You're converting wealth into fabric that depreciates to nearly zero value the moment you remove the tags. Fast fashion has accelerated this wealth destruction by making clothing so cheap that replacement feels costless, creating a cycle of constant purchasing that actually costs more than buying quality items once. You're spending $50 monthly on disposable clothing instead of $200 once every few years on durable goods, and somehow this feels like saving money because each individual purchase is small. The wealthy understand that true economy comes from buying quality once, rather than cheap repeatedly, but the middle class has been trained to optimize for low unit prices, rather than low total cost. Technology spending represents another area where the middle class systematically overspends on upgrades that provide minimal additional value. You're replacing smartphones every 2 years when they'd function perfectly fine for 5. You're buying new laptops when your current one just needs a battery replacement. You're upgrading televisions to gain features you'll never use because the marketing convinced you that bigger screens equal better lives. This technology treadmill costs thousands annually, while generating virtually no improvement in actual quality of life. The fitness industry has perfected the art of extracting wealth from guilt and aspiration, selling gym memberships that go unused, equipment that becomes expensive coat racks, and programs that promise transformation through spending rather than effort. You're paying $50 monthly for a gym membership you use twice, buying $200 running shoes for runs you never take, and investing in home equipment that depreciates to garage sale value within months. The wealthy understand that fitness requires discipline, not spending, but the middle class keeps trying to purchase health rather than earn it. Pet ownership has evolved into another wealth extraction mechanism, where middle-class families spend an average of $1,500 annually per pet on food, veterinary care, grooming, and accessories. Premium pet food, designer collars, doggy daycare, and veterinary insurance all convert wealth into animal care that exceeds what many people spend on their own health. You love your pets, obviously, but the pet industry has convinced you that love requires constant spending on products and services that previous generations of pet owners managed without just fine. Home decor and furnishing represents the trap of constantly upgrading functional items for aesthetic reasons that provide zero practical benefit. You're replacing furniture that works perfectly because you saw something you liked better. You're buying decorative items that serve no purpose beyond filling space. You're renovating rooms that function fine because design trends changed. This continuous upgrading converts wealth into depreciating household goods while convincing you that you're investing in your living environment. The hobby trap operates differently than other wealth destroys because it disguises spending as personal development or legitimate interest pursuit. You're buying expensive camera equipment for photography you'll abandon in 6 months. You're investing in golf clubs for a sport you'll play twice yearly. You're purchasing musical instruments that will gather dust after the initial enthusiasm fades. Each hobby becomes an expensive experiment funded by money that could be building actual wealth, justified by the idea that you're investing in yourself when you're actually just consuming. Gift giving has become another competitive spending arena where the middle class tries to demonstrate affection through expenditure rather than thoughtfulness. Holiday spending, birthday presents, and various celebratory occasions create expected spending that extracts thousands annually while generating minimal lasting value. You're buying gifts people don't need with money. You don't have to maintain social expectations that everyone secretly resents. The wealthy understand that relationships don't require constant financial demonstration, but the middle class remains trapped in reciprocal spending cycles that benefit only retailers. Lawn care and outdoor maintenance represents another uniquely middle-class wealth trap, where homeowners spend thousands annually maintaining grass that serves no practical purpose beyond neighborhood conformity. Landscaping services, lawn equipment, fertilizers, and irrigation systems convert wealth into aesthetic standards imposed by homeowners associations and social expectations. You're paying to maintain green rectangles that could be replaced with low-maintenance alternatives, but the middle class treats lawn care as a moral obligation rather than an optional expense. The underlying pattern across all these traps is the same. You're converting wealth into consumption that provides temporary satisfaction while destroying long-term financial security. Every dollar spent on these middle-class status markers is a dollar that can't compound into actual wealth. The path forward requires recognizing that wealth building isn't about earning more, it's about spending less on things that don't matter, so you can invest more in things that do. Question every expense. Calculate opportunity costs. Choose utility over status. The middle class remains financially trapped, not because they lack income, but because they've accepted consumption patterns designed to keep them perpetually broke while feeling temporarily successful.